Hey everyone, it's John Heath here again for Milton Rose Learning with another Let's Learn lesson on the poem Poppies by Jane Weir. Okay, so this is very much a war poem exploring the kind of negative impacts and the negative emotional impacts of conflict. So we're going to look at some of the key context that you need to know about the poem, so that will just help open the door to it really. Then we'll have a little poetry reading, so we'll just whiz our way through the what is a magnificent kind of conflict poem, and then we'll give you some of the best annotations just to start you off and to start your kind of your annotations in your anthology. Okay then people, let's dive in with context. So you've got a lovely field of poppies there. Poppies obviously from World War One, but also they become symbolic of all the casualties in all wars, and Jane Weir there, the poet. So let's dive in then. So first off, in terms of context, this is a poem about modern war and personal loss. The poem reflects the impact of recent conflicts, predominantly the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, which went on for a long time. But it explores the effect on families, so focusing on the emotional experience of a mother losing her son to war. So quite an unusual perspective there to focus on the families rather than the combat and the physical injuries themselves. Symbolism of the poppy. So the poppy, as I said, is a symbol of remembrance for fallen soldiers, so it links personal grief to the wider national memory and sacrifice. Okay, you probably saw poppies that come out every November, and it is that act of remembrance for fallen soldiers. So they're intensely symbolic, and it's important that you tease that out. Then this provides obviously a female perspective on war. So unlike many traditional war poems, Poppies gives voice to the home front. So it highlights the silent pain and resilience of women during wartime, because obviously it affects not just the soldiers, but also the families back home. Okay, and it's quite unusual to get a female perspective on war. So those are three of the best contextual points that you need to understand. Now then, let's look and let's do a little poetry reading. I always think poems are better when they're read aloud than just read out in your mind. So we're just going to get a feel for these, and we'll have a nice read of it and just get a feel for the phonology and the sounds of the words. 3 days before Armistice Sunday, and poppies had already been placed on individual war graves. Before you left, I pinned one onto your lapel. Crimped petals, spasms of paper red, disrupting a blockade of yellow bias binding around your blazer. Sellotape bandaged around my hand. I rounded up as many white cat hairs as I could, smoothed down your shirt, upturned collar, steeled the softening of my face. I wanted to graze my nose across the tip of your nose, play at being Eskimos like we did when you were little. I resisted the impulse to run my fingers through the gelled black thorns of your hair. All my words flattened, rolled, and turned into felt. So she's preparing her son here to go to war, basically. Then the last two stanzas of the poem. Slowly melting, I was brave as I walked with you to the front door, threw it open, the world overflowing like a treasure chest. A split second and you were away. Intoxicated. After you'd gone, I went into your bedroom, released a songbird from its cage. Beautiful image. Later, a single dove flew from the pear tree, and this is where it has led me. Skirting the churchyard walls, my stomach busy making tucks, darts, pleats, hatless, without a winter coat or reinforcement of scarves, gloves. So obviously he's died now. We're talking kind of like funereal imagery. I'm reaching the top of the hill. I traced the inscriptions on the war memorial, leaned against it like a wishbone. The dove pulled freely against the sky, an ornamental stitch. I listened, hoping to hear your playground voice catching on the wind. Very, very sad, very, very poignant kind of poem there. And she's lost her son, and she's reflecting on that loss, isn't she? It's the emotional damage and trauma that's been done to her as a mother. So now then, let's look at some of the key annotations that should go into your anthology. So the opening and domestic imagery, 3 days before Armistice Sunday, and poppies had already been placed on individual war graves. So poppies, as we know, are a symbol of remembrance and death in war, and it sets the solemn kind of tone, very, very solemn, and it also foreshadows the soldier's death. Domestic context as well. War intrudes into ordinary family life. In some ways, the families of kind of war casualties, they never escape this sense of loss. It will live with them forever, and I think that really comes across in the opening of this poem. The maternal voice and innocence. So before you left, I pinned one onto your lapel, crimped petals, spasms of proper red, of paper red. Sorry, she's putting the poppy on the kind of soldier son. The domestic act of pinning, so it's a motherly gesture of care. It's contrasted with the violent imagery, though, spasms of paper red. It almost, for me, that if you look at the image of like that red poppy, it's almost symbolic of like a bullet wound for me, kind of the blood kind of coming out and the black in the middle being the hole that's made by the bullet. That's just the way I interpret it, but it's kind of foreshadowing. Spasms has connotations of injury and death. It foreshadows loss. Okay, this soldier will die. It's kind of that foreshadowing there. Then the emotional strain and distance. I resisted the impulse to run my fingers through the gelled black thorns of your hair. So the blackthorn's harsh, painful metaphor for the barrier between the mother and son. She's got to let him go now, effectively. And the suppressed emotion. It reflects the tension between maternal love and letting go of her son. All parents have to let go of their children anyway, eventually, don't they? Because they all grow up. But this is almost an unnatural kind of sense of departure. He's being torn away from her in some ways and kind of going into a very, very dangerous environment, and she has to emotionally suppress that as a mother. And then the ending and grief. I mean, it's a beautiful image. I released a songbird from its cage. So the symbolism there, the bird represents the son's spirit and the sense of freedom, or it could also symbolize his death. It's ambiguous. You could interpret that how you want. And like we say there is an ambiguity there. The release of the bird could mean independence, letting the memories of her child go, potentially, or maybe even permanent loss. You can debate that in class and you can kind of analyse it. It's a very ambiguous part of the text, but a beautifully wrought kind of line and image. Okay, so hopefully that's given you just a beginner's guide really to poppies and just helps you get started with that poem. A very, very beautifully put together poem and quite unusual in reflecting the female kind of perspective on war. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another Let's Learn video again. If you do have anything that you want to kind of talk about or discuss about the poem, please do put it in the chat and the comments, and we'll pick it up on YouTube. And it just remains to say, obviously, thanks for listening. Take care, and we'll see you soon.